Hello, everyone. Today we're going to talk about what's the functional team culture. And so the topics are obvious. Oops. And it's basically, what is it, what creates it, and how can you have more of it? And then if we've got time, quite time for questions. So this presentation builds on some previous presentations that I've done before. So some of the content you will recognize, but we learn by repetition. So hopefully you will still find this interesting. Okay, so the first thing you may remember, we talked about the cultural iceberg, that a lot of the things that we do are hidden underneath the surface. So when we talk about culture, we operate through all of these patterns, but we're not necessarily aware of them. So when we are creating a sustainable team culture, what is needed is a conscious, intentional effort. We need to actually have some guidelines, some tools to address and to make this happen. Because if we don't talk about it, people will operate through the patterns that they have learned either in other organizations or even at home. So and if you have a multicultural environment, and can get very, very interesting. So when you know how to do all of that, and when you've put those guidelines and those tools in place, it will benefit everybody. It will benefit business outcomes. It will employ in people's well-being, as well as making sure that the company and the organization stays sustainable. So the question is now, what are the characteristics of a functional team culture? And this will reiterate a lot of the same things that I've mentioned before. The first thing is always respect. So when we have respect for each other, then we can actually talk about things. We have accountability, which is the opposite of blamability. We can also care about, not for. So if you may remember my presentation about needs, children have a right to have their needs taken care of. So we're responsible for fulfilling their needs. As adults, we care about each other and we support each other in fulfilling our needs, but we're not responsible. So and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but what it does, it takes the responsibility for something off your shoulders as a leader, because you don't have to actually be responsible for somebody, but you can empower them to be accountable, which makes all the difference to your ability to go home at night and have a life. It's also about making sure that everybody's on the same page, and that when you are meeting individual and collective goals, you can actually create all of that ability to grow and to empower people. What you also stop is you stop silos. If you're working with different departments, it may be internal as well as external. When you start empowering people to fulfill their needs for competence and autonomy, and you stop micromanaging, which is what a lot of people do when they think they need to make sure that the outcomes are absolutely perfect, you will create a really great team culture. So I'm going to now, for those of you who don't know this is called the PAC model, the parent, adult, child model. So we've got parent, adult, child. These are the ego types that the ego mindsets that we talk from, we communicate from, and we operate from. So when we build a team structure and a team culture where people trust each other, where they have respect for each other, it's really, really important to be aware of this model. I'll give you an example. I had, before I tell you the story, let me just give you the different types. So on one hand, we've got the critical and the benevolent parent. And on the other hand, we've got the needy, compliant, or rebellious child. So, so when we're in that mindset, of not even knowing what kind of type we're talking through, what we do is it's then the cultural iceberg comes into full action, because all of these unspoken assumptions and deep-seated beliefs can lead to us talking from that parent or child level, especially when behaviors are not addressed or understood. So it's really important to know where you're talking from. So if you have a look at this picture, I know body language is really important, so you might be able to tell what kind of ego type are these people talking from to each other. No?
Yeah. Those that want to speak will have to unmute first.
Yeah. So this is
The
benevolent.
parent,
Sorry, Neville. Okay.
yeah, the one standing up is doing the benevolent parent, and then you've got the child that's quite receptive.
Yes. And here we've got, it's a little bit more subtle, but it's still there.
Rebellious child.
Yeah. And benevolent parent, right? Still caring for. What's this?
Like, yes.
Mm.
And then, of course, last but not least, we have the best combination ever. This is when people operate from a mindset of, you don't tell me what to do. And when you've got a critical parent, and when you've got you're somebody who operates from micromanaging, from perfectionism, from, you have to do what you're told, what you often get is the person who procrastinates in their tasks. They're not really living up to their potential, even though they have a lot. And so the best way to deal with that is to actually stay in adult to adult, which is where everybody is accountable for what they do, and you can have those conversations. And then what you do is you create psychological safety. And psychological safety is really, really important, because what it does, it creates effective cooperation, and it makes cooperation also open and respectful. So these three aspects are really, really important, because it helps people express their ideas, and in a way where they are not afraid of judgment or of negative consequences, because they can take risks. They know that they are risk-taking, the ability to step up and say, hey, I've got some ideas. There's something that I could do which would actually enhance this company, which would make a difference to how we work together, the outcomes we create, whatever it is. That means, and oops, I made a mistake. So when people can do that, it increases innovation, collaboration, and it helps people really get into that place of contributing fully. And then, of course, what it also does is, when we come from that place of psychological safety, when we have the ability to give each other constructive feedback. So we're able to say, this isn't quite working. Could we do this differently? And it doesn't come from that place of corrective parent, where you go, you've made a mistake, and now I'm going to tell you how to do it correctly. And the person just feels, and that feeling when somebody comes from that place of adult, from a parent, what that feels like. Like, I had a client who he was the company owner, and he complained that he never got anything out of people, and that he just never built any relationships with them. And also he couldn't really respect them, because they were just really not living up to what they could do. And he had to do everything himself. And he was really outraged about that, because people were just not stepping up. So and you can try this. Think about somebody in your life who you work with. Close your eyes and think of that person. And as you think of that person, if you've got somebody who's fairly meaningful in your life, but somebody maybe you delegate to. So think about that person, and now see if you represent them in your mind, life size, larger than life, or smaller than life. And just notice how you see them. So you give them tasks to do, you delegate to them, they make things happen for you. How do you see them? And just notice, because chances are, if you see them smaller than life, you're very likely in parent position and they're in child. And if you see them larger than life, and you're coming from that smaller than life position, you're very likely to be in child position. So then you might have reversed that whole leadership position. That would be a really good one to look at. But if you represent them life size, chances are you'll come from adult. I had a client who, when we did this exercise, he realized he was representing everyone in his organization smaller than life. So to his credit, he went through everybody he was working with and started practicing representing them life size. He changed his communication to them, and he said it completely changed the team culture completely. And there was, all of a sudden, there was the thing that really matters most, that we talked about in my last presentation, trust, which is absolutely crucial. So what else matters? Clear communication, always. Again, establishing behavioral guidelines. I can't tell you what a difference it makes when people know exactly what to do and what not to do. And again, not from a parent place, but from these are the guidelines we have agreed to, because it increases accountability, empathy, and understanding. Sharing the vision is really, really important, because that means you can also then address challenges really openly, and you can celebrate wins. A highly underrated thing, which I'm going to address in a separate presentation. Some other tips, really important, allow for mistakes. We learn by repetition, and expecting people to do something right after they've done it once is not going to be enough. We generally may need to make mistakes 6 to 9 times before we've learned something, before it becomes conscious, and before we realize that something's not quite working. So focus on growth and achievements instead of perfection. We're all work in progress. And acknowledge what works rather than what doesn't work. And that's the critical parent. When you go back to this, you could have done this better. That what it does, it puts people into child position. And encourage collaboration from that adult to adult place. Set clear goals and expectations, again, also from a collaborative space, and then provide regular feedback and allowing people to fulfill their needs for competency and for accountability, which are absolute, and for autonomy, which are two of our core needs. What this does, it allows people to address conflict and challenges immediately with you, and then you can course correct very, very quickly. The most important thing is always lead by example. So next week, we're going to talk about leading from head and heart, and the impact that different leadership styles have on your ability to balance those things. Because sometimes people say, oh God, what am I really soft? And what if I lose my effectiveness? So we're going to talk about that next week. That's it. Thank you very much.